Hello and welcome to Newshour from the BBC World Service. We're coming to you live from London. I'm James Menendez. Now, they've already begun dismantling all the stages, displays, meeting rooms and indeed the media centre at the UN Climate Summit in Dubai. Apparently there's a big festive holiday event taking its place before the end of the week. But as ever, the process of dissecting what was and what wasn't achieved at COP28 will take much longer than it takes to clear down the Dubai Exhibition Centre. The headline, though, is this: an agreement between all the 200 or so countries and territories taking part to transition away, that's the phrase used, from coal, oil and gas, the fossil fuels that when burned emit the gases that are heating our planet. For many countries, the key issue is money to compensate for decades of emissions by industrialised economies, money to help vulnerable regions adapt to the realities of climate change, and money to help fund the move away from fossil fuels to renewable sources of energy, wind and solar and so on. A new loss and damage fund was agreed at this summit with some 800 million of pledges near enough, but promises of money for adaptation still fall far short of what the agreement says are needed, between $200 and nearly $400 billion every year. Let's talk to John Asafu-Adjaye, Senior Fellow at the African Centre for Economic Transformation. He was at the COP Summit till this weekend and joins us on the line from Accra in Ghana. John, good to have you with us. Those pledges of money, do you think that African countries will regard those as sufficient?
No, unfortunately, you just mentioned that 800 million was pledged to the loss and damage fund, which is a good start. But Africa, for example, needs $44 billion per year, which amounts to about 441 billion between 2020 and 2030. So it's good that there's money in the fund, but that's not enough. You also mentioned the adaptation fund, which is to help developing countries take measures to adjust to the rising temperatures. $187 was pledged, but again, that's not enough. It's about $300 million are needed. So the short and long of it is that we still need more climate finance to help African countries and developing countries in general transition to low carbon. One thing that came out of the COP was that there's now an agreement to transition out of fossil fuels, but there were no concrete programs to help African countries to do that.
Okay, and is that why some African countries were involved in that push back against the language talking about phasing out of fossil fuels? Because presumably they were thinking, well, if you're not going to help us switch to renewables, we need to hold on to what we've got.
Exactly. And some of them are also saying that they're faced with what we call stranded assets. So their oil and gas, if they're not going to use it, they need to be compensated for that to be able to transition. And there was nothing on that front. So it is a valid point because, electricity access is very low, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. About half the population do not have access to electricity and clean cooking. And we cannot transition to renewables overnight, so there's going to be a transition period and we need finance and we need technology transfer to help us do that. And that was not forthcoming from what I saw from the announcement.
So disappointing.
Yes, but at least there's the will there. There's a will, so we can still start. We can keep on negotiating and advocating for more finance and more technology transfer to help us transition within a short period.
Yeah, and it is an annual process, so we'll see what happens at the next COP, COP29. John, thank you very much indeed for joining us. John Asafu-Adjaye of the African Centre for Economic Transformation, joining us from Ghana.